Hey, people, what's up? I'm here. Are you here? My puppy dogs are both here. So let's get rolling. You know how I've been playing it lately. I turn on my live to start before I'm completely like pulled together just because I'm trying to be as genuine and authentic as possible. So, how do you do that without being a contrived version of genuine and authentic? I don't know, but that's my goal. So, how was your weekend? It's Monday. It is December 2nd. And if anybody is here, please let me know if my mic is working well. It's all plugged in. And I've got a bunch of notes. I got a bunch of crazy stuff to talk with you guys about, but I need more coffee. And I've got my cup right here. Oh my goodness. In my last video on Friday, I forgot to go back and talk to you guys about the Gatorade factor in the Gabby Petito, Kylan Schulte, and Crystal Turner case. So prepare to be completely confused or enlightened, one of the two. I mean, it's really like insignificant, but massively significant potentially at the same time. I mean, I don't know. I don't have the answers. I just have some questions. And I'm trying harder and harder to phrase everything I say as a question. So you can help me out and remind me. Let me go ahead and get started with my regular routine stuff. Please chase some unicorns while you're here. Make sure you're still subscribed if you are subscribed to my channel. And if you're not, please consider doing so. It helps me out a great deal. And if you like this kind of content, then that is just a good thing to do. Then it's self-serving, right? Share a video of mine if you like, or my channel with a person or a group of people. Turn on your notification bell to ring if you want to know when I'm coming on live. And I do apologize for surprising you guys with my lives. It's just, I'm doing the best that I can. And it's the way it is working for me at the moment. But coffee. Everything I say, it's simply my opinion. Something that I've been trying to do is learn and grow and be less forgetful, more educated, and more humble. I mean, I've always been pretty humble, but I don't know if you can be too humble or not. Okay. Turn on your notification bell, hit your thumbs up. You guys, some people don't even know what their notification bell is. So I think a lot of times when it has a line over the notification bell, people think that they've been unsubbed. So there's just so many little quirky things with this platform, and we're constantly learning. And then as soon as we get it, in the bag, then they decide to go change it on us, right? Isn't that the way all these things work in life? The new and improved whatever. Oh man, it used to drive me crazy when I was on Facebook, and it still drives me crazy on my iPhone, but I'm not on Facebook, which has been such a gift. I think I gave that to myself for Christmas. I don't even remember if it was last year or the year before. It was probably the year before. Anyway, I totally surprised myself on Christmas Day. I was just like, oh, I know what I'll give me. No Facebook. And it's stuck for, I don't know, I think it's been 2 years this coming Christmas. But it's kind of like quitting cigarettes. Like I had tried many times to quit Facebook. You're always like, I'll quit tomorrow. Just one more post, just one more thing. And yeah, one thing leads to another. And before you know it, a year has passed and all you do is scroll and roll and post and like. And anyway, I always say if that's your biggest problem, you're really lucky. But no, I mean, social media is addictive, and I am a recovering addict. And so I do need to be careful with what I get myself addicted to. I'm totally addicted to caffeine, and I'm not going to mess with that. That's like the one thing I have learned the hard way. Don't touch that. Don't try to fix what's not broken. I try to be addicted to healthy food, fresh produce, high protein, yoga, walking, puppies, kitties, and just staying positive and keeping it real with you guys. So far it's working out all right. I can't believe I've gotten myself addicted to yoga. I can't believe it. I'm so excited about that. Anyway, moving right along. So we're going to talk about the Gatorade, and I'm not going to forget this time. That's going to be the top of the docket. But there are some really important other things I want to touch base on. I want to give a overview of the status with the Sheriff Mickey Stein case. You know, the sheriff who shot his friend, the judge, and the daughter and the wife, and he said that they were trying to kidnap him and all that jazz. I think I might know what he meant. But I also want to update on the Hannah Kashiobi, however you say her name. I didn't look at it right before I came on. So I think it's Kashiobi. Anyway, Hannah from Hawaii that's been missing for almost a month now. And nobody's here. How sad. There's some updates on her case, and I don't want to say I told you so because I don't think it's over. Far from it. But at this point, it looks like they're saying exactly what I said last week. I thought this case would turn out all along. I think it's very suspicious. I'm suspicious of the entire family at this point. And I'm suspicious of her, and I think it's way too much like the Kylie Rodney case. I think that family's hiding stuff, so they're trying to get people to back off. But I think part of why people do these things is to get a social media platform like Scammy, like Tony Dodge, like MC Ultra, like Check It. And maybe some of Hannah's family members thought that they could do something crafty and develop quickly overnight, you know, because nothing happens quick overnight, that they could develop these platforms where they could get the money rolling in, and they'd start out with a couple 100,000 subs. And, you know, sure, I'm no pro. That might work for some people. But overall, you gotta keep it real, or people are going to figure out that you're bogus and want nothing to do with you. And you might get yourself in trouble socially or with the law, financially. You know, there's more of these financial things. Anyway, let's go back to the Gatorade. Let's start there because I felt really bad when I reviewed my tape and I was like, that was the thing I didn't go back to. Okay. So some people don't know about the Gatorade in the Gabby Petito case and in the Kylan Schulte and Crystal Turner case. So if you remember going back to August 12th, 2021, when Gabby and Brian were pulled over by the Moab PD, and there were several officers there. I think, I know for sure Melissa Hulls was from the National Park Services. I think that there might have been another entity, like maybe Highway Patrol Trooper or something, but there were at least 4 cars, I think, with at least 4 different law enforcement officers. And when they pulled them over, it was a really hot day. Like, I mean, I think Moab in August is always hot. It's the desert. But I think that day was one of the hottest of the whole summer. And I think it was about 100 degrees. But Gabby and Brian had been out of water for a while when they were still at the Moonflower. And I think that the table that Gabby had been sitting at working on her social media platform to do this type of thing, to have a channel, I think that she was sitting at the coffee shop next to Moonflower, but I don't know. There was some type of coffee table outside of Moonflower or right near there where she was sitting. Oh, and I found out it was from 9 a.m. from about 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. So about 6 hours. And most of the time that she was working on her website, it sounds like her dearly beloved boyfriend was harassing her to go for a hike out at Delicate Arches. And remember, she made that post about how this old man beat her up with a cane out at Delicate Arches. That was weird. Anybody know the date on that post? Because I'm wondering if it could have been right after that. I'm wondering if it could have been like Saturday the 14th or Friday the 13th. I never realized that was a Friday the 13th. Because wasn't August 12th of 2021, wasn't that a Thursday? Yeah, it was. I don't even need to look it up. I'm pretty much 100% sure. So anyway, we know that Gabby made this weird post about how she was climbing up the rock to the Delicate Arch, and some old man in his 80s with a cane was like needing help, and she was trying to help him, and he was beating her with the cane, right? And we were all like, you think that's true? Do you think that's a cover story for something else that might have happened? And on Saturday the 14th is when Crystal Turner and Kylan Schulte were both unalived at their campground. And I want you to take this trigger warning very seriously, because there's something in that case that I think a lot of us have missed, even if we got it at some point. I think we kind of let it go in one ear and out the other because it's just too unsettling. I know that that's what I've done anyway. So if you're ready, and you're ready for a major, major trigger warning with the case with the two of them. And the Gatorade is what ties the two cases together. If you didn't catch that yet, I need to be explicit and try to stay focused. Crystal and Kylan were discovered with clothing only from the waist up. That's the nicest way I can put it. Okay. And Kaylin was in the creek, and a woman named Cindy found her, and she was on the phone with Kaylin's father, and she went and interviewed on the Pascal show and told all about it. And then she waited for law enforcement to arrive, and then they found Crystal. But she had a really good intuition about where Crystal would be. She was like, check over there. But the whole thing was very traumatic for her. And one of the things that she mentions in this interview with Pascal, I'm not sure what his first name is, if that's his first name, but I really like his channel. I was really happy when I first found him. And I might have first found him because of this interview, or maybe I already knew him of his channel. Anyway, he's a great content creator. He's a pro. And the interview is really good. And he's a really good interviewer. He not only asks the right questions, but he keeps going back and gently to the really uncomfortable questions that are the super important questions. So when Cindy got to the campsite, I think one of the first things she noticed was their bunny rabbit that was in a cage. And then something that she noticed right before she noticed Kylan laying in the creek was she mentioned something about these Gatorade bottles. What was the word she used? Strewn, I think, was the word that Pascal said. And I think she said, just spread out all around the campground. So I don't know. It's odd. Early on in the case, there was a lot of talk about that in the Gatorade bottles. And I remember some person, like in a Facebook group, trying to theorize that maybe they used the bottles of Gatorade as ammunition for this weirdo to try to make him go away, which, anything's possible, but sounds pretty far-fetched. Like, yeah. I mean, they were two women with, they'd been through a lot already, and they're living on the land. They're van lifers, basically, but this was like their quasi-permanent homestead, 45 minutes up in the mountains outside of Moab on the LaSalle Loop Road. And Crystal rode a motorcycle, and Kaylin's brother had been red rummed a couple of years earlier. Her 15-year-old brother may or may not have been an accident. It went down on the record as being accidental. His friend, I won't get into it. It's so sad. Anyway, they both have had rough pasts, and they were really happy to be together, and they were really happy for their lives to be kind of, you know, done with all of that challenge. What I'm trying to say is I doubt that they were not carrying some type of protection. And in a situation like that, I think anybody would have a pew pew, but if not a pew pew, at least a sharp edged object, right? So they both were shot in the rear side, I think about 5 or 6 bullets each. And it was like around like 11:30 in the morning, I think, because there was a wedding nearby and people were videotaping at the wedding. And so they had maybe it was 12 shots that were fired, but they were on everyone's recording. So they know exactly what time it happened at. There was a lot of backtracking with the whole thing, and where the Gatorade ties the two cases together potentially, and I want to again put it out there as a question, not a statement, is that when Gabby and Brian were stopped by the police, and one of the things they said they were doing was they were going out to the national park to fill up their 5 or 6 gallon water bottle with the fresh spring water, and that they were out of water and they were very thirsty. And the law enforcement kept trying to offer them water. And Gabby accepted a couple of small plastic bottles of water that she mostly just held on to. I never saw her drinking out of one of them, but I think one of them was less than full. Brian, on the other hand, refused all of their water. It was just like, yeah, screw you and your plastic. Not happening. I will sooner die of dehydration than touch your stupid plastic water bottles. I mean, he was trying to be polite, but it was weird. You know, it's like you're being stopped by the police. It's 100 degrees out. You're out of water. Just drink some effing water. But at one point, what was it that the cop said to Gabby at the 1 hour and 4 minute and 34-second mark? Cop says to Gabby, "Do you want that Gatorade?" So the way he says it, "Do you want that Gatorade?" implies that he had already talked with her about the Gatorade earlier, which I could swear that I remember vividly a unopened bottle of Gatorade sitting on the curb by the vehicle that she was being interviewed in, and that got left there at the end of the interaction. That they did hand her Gatorade when they handed her the water. They handed her 2 bottles of water and 1 bottle of Gatorade. But I rewatched the video. Maybe I need to rewatch another channel of that whole interaction. And I'm glad that I rewatched the whole thing, because as painstaking as those things seem sometimes, they're also extremely enlightening. So Pratt was the lead sergeant on the case. He was the guy with the big beard who kept talking about his own life and his own wife and his own issues. Okay, what we didn't know about Pratt at the time was that he had been the police chief of a small department. I think the name of the town was Salina in Utah, and that he had gotten himself resigned from that position when a girlfriend accused him of domestic violence and threatening her life. So he had been a police chief, and he was no longer a police chief. Now he was a sergeant for Moab. But at one point, he asks the person that he's training if this domestic violence call would be considered Class A or Class B. He's the one training the guy, and he has been a police chief, and he's a sergeant, and he's asking the person that he's training if this is Class A or Class B. So that told me a lot. That told me that he got moved up the ranks to police chief when he shouldn't have been. He didn't even know the difference between the A and the B class of the domestic violence call. But also, oh, here's the quote about the Gatorade: torn out of the sleeves and scattered all over. That's Cindy's quote. That it's 20 minutes into the interview with Pascal. She says that the bottles were torn out of the sleeve and scattered all over. And then when Pascal tries to talk to her more about it a minute later, he says the words, the description, strewn across the ground. Anyway, back to my Pratt notes. So Pratt was very aware of the fact that he was interacting with a very significantly tiny 22-year-old, blonde-haired, blue-eyed young woman that would not be safe to be left alone out in the wilderness in her van, basically. But that was exactly what he was taking the interaction, the disposition of the interaction was going to do exactly that. It was going to leave her with the white van and no place to stay, and Brian Laundrie tucked away nicely in a hotel room with a shower and a remote control and all that good stuff. So Pratt said a lot of weird things that I hadn't caught before. When the younger guy that he's training is doing a really good job, and he asks Brian about when he drove up on the curb when they were first pulling him over, and Brian said that Gabby grabbed the wheel, and he was like, oh. And then a long time later in the interaction, because this whole interaction was like over an hour. I think it started at about 5 o'clock and it went until after 6 o'clock. I think it started right before 5 o'clock. Anyway, when that officer that Pratt was training asked Gabby about when the car went up on the curb, she said that that was her fault because she was hitting him. And he was like, oh, really? You were hitting him? He said you grabbed the wheel. And she said, I would never do that. I would never do that. Like a normal person. No one's going to grab the wheel when someone else is driving unless they're like seriously emotionally disturbed and maybe self-interest, right? Or if the person's driving so crazy, you try grabbing the wheel to get it back under control. But anyway, she is very convincing, in my opinion. Like, I would never do that. No, I was hitting him. So she's trying to take credit for his bad driving, but the two are inconsistent. And so it's after a little bit later that officer says to Pratt, hey, by the way, their two stories don't jibe. He said that she grabbed the wheel. She swore that she didn't grab the wheel. And Pratt's sort of curious, like, oh, well, what did she say? And the guy's like, well, she said that she was hitting him. And Pratt's response essentially is, oh, sounds legit. So she was hitting him, but he thought she was grabbing the wheel. Makes sense. Did I set this wrong? Because there's nobody here and that's unusual, but that's fine. That's fine. I might have just set it so that it was like members only instead of subscribers only or something. I don't know. Who knows? There's always something to trip you up, right? Anyway, I miss you guys. So if you're here and can say hi in the chat, please do. Otherwise, I'll just keep going, which is good because I do have a lot of ground to cover today. Since I didn't make a video since Friday, I came close on Saturday night, I think, and then again Sunday, but I was just busy with too much other stuff. And I knew you guys weren't expecting anything from me over the weekend, so I just thought I'll save everything for Monday. Anyway, it's my opinion that those police officers, other than Melissa Hulls, because I think she's pretty fine, and I think the guy that Pratt's training is actually fine too, now that I think about it. But I think that Pratt and then the other guy, the guy who has like the face mask on and is like miming how Gabby just tore Brian apart with her bare hands because, she's so big and tough and he's not. Those two should be really embarrassed to ever see this footage of them interacting with a domestic violence call. One of the things that Pratt said is, well, we never got a call that a male hit a female. We got a call that said something else, basically. He was mansplaining it. When they did, in fact, get a call that said it was the man who called, because they got 2 911 calls and they've only revealed one of the tapes, and that's the guy. They've never said whether the other one was a girl or a guy. That could have been Kaylin Schulte or Crystal Turner, but Kaylin I think would be more likely, since she was working outside at the Moonflower all day that day. And the male caller says that the man hit the woman, and the dispatcher even asks him to be more explicit and to go into greater detail and questions, are you saying that he actually struck her? And he said, yes, the man struck the woman. I've heard it many a times. So Pratt gets that completely wrong. He says that, that the caller never said that the man hit the woman. It's like, yeah, the caller actually did say the man hit the woman. But we found out later that Pratt is a domestic violence perpetrator on his own. Weird. I mean, Gabby was so scared and so timid and shaking and rattled, and that fear in her eyes, like the fear of a small animal that's about to get eaten by a large animal. I mean, it's so piercing to me when I look at those gorgeous blue eyes and just how they're just like out of their mind kind of set. Here, let me shut the door here. Sorry, I had my studio door open because I thought I was home alone, but it sounds like somebody just came in. So, into the house. So I just wanted to close the door so we wouldn't have a bunch of background noise to distract. Anyway, the situation with Kaylin and Crystal and the Gatorade is that Brian was very offended by the offering of the water in the plastic bottles. And I would imagine that he was mad at Gabby for accepting a couple of those bottles, but that's just my speculation. I could be wrong about that. Anyway, the Gatorade that on this tape, I could only find the quote of, do you want that Gatorade? At an hour and 4 minutes and 34 seconds into the body cam video. But to me, that implies that they already had the conversation about the Gatorade sometime earlier, and then he's trying to check with her. But anyway, there could be a weird thing with the Gatorade symbolizing something to someone, and that they threw a bunch of Gatorade bottles on the grounds when this double homicide occurred 2 days later. And then it was 2 days after that Brian Laundrie flew to Florida to help his dad clear out a storage unit, allegedly, as if his dad wouldn't know how to clear out a storage unit on his own. Something is so fishy about that story. So fishy. And I know I saw a photograph of what looked like Gabby and Brian and Cassie, Brian's sister, on the shore of a lake on some big rocks. And it's kind of taken from a distance, and it's mostly the backs of them. So it's hard to identify that it's really the three of them, but their silhouettes, their posture, their body shapes and types, all of that looks exactly like Gabby, Brian, and Brian's sister, Cassie, who is, how do I say this without being mean? She's just very short and round. Okay, we'll just say it like that. And then you have Gabby, who is about 5'5" and about 110 pounds, and then you have Brian, who is probably 5'11", maybe 6 feet, and probably like 160-ish pounds. So he's tall and slender. Gabby's kind of tall and slender, and then Brian's sister is neither tall nor slender. And anyway, there was a lot of speculation about her going to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, or going out there before Gabby had passed away. I don't know if any of that's true. I don't know if any of that panned out, but we all know that Cassie had a lot to hide, basically, in that case. Let's see. So my point about the whole thing with the domestic violence call is, if Pratt, who was in charge, who was the lead, if he, rather than saying sounds legit when things didn't jibe, if he had said, I wonder why their stories are not the same. I wonder why their stories don't match. I wonder why she says she didn't grab the wheel and he says she grabbed the wheel. Because Brian was a gaslighter and he straight up lied to them and they straight up bought it. And I mean, what domestic violence perpetrator is not a gaslighter and not a liar? I don't know that one exists, but maybe. Anyway, it's just really sad that the police also last week had the whole $50 million lawsuit from Gabby's family against the Moab PD dismissed by a judge. Like, that happened midweek, like right around the same time I was talking about the case, not knowing that anything currently was going on with it. And then when I rewatched that video, it's just devastating. Absolutely devastating. So, what else? So I wanted to finish talking about that with a quote that I learned when I had to sue King County in Seattle, is that in this situation, Sergeant Pratt, he knew or should have known that with a domestic violence call that people would be dishonest. It's his job to know. And with any training at all, you learn very quickly that women are always quick to take the blame, and women are always quick, if the woman is the one being abused, which is usually the case, that the women are usually really quick to cover for the abuser because they know that they'll get more abuse if they don't. So there was just such a lack of training or a lack of ability to execute what was learned in training, if they did actually have training. And, the whole purpose of Gabby's family suing was to change that, not just for the Moab PD, but for all law enforcement. And it wasn't about the money. I mentioned last week how Brian Laundrie's family was loaded, and I think his sister and her husband were too, with their business of parts for the juice machines. And maybe they ran like a juice repair company. But Brian Laundrie's parents, I think, ran some of the juice bar companies. And I know for a fact that they were millionaires. And I think that that was just one of their many investments, because Roberta had worked for the government up in Long Island for 25 years, and she was retired from that. And then what I wanted to say is that Gabby's parents, both her biological mom and her stepdad, and her biological dad and her stepmom, that they were also well-heeled. That I don't know that they were millionaires or not, but it's kind of immaterial. I know that they were financially very sound, both sides of her family. So That makes a difference as far as people's ability to pursue justice in our system. You really can't pursue justice in our system without money, unfortunately. But also, you need to have an inside track like Roberta had with her government job. So that makes a huge difference if you know people that work for the government. That's going to help you out if you're connected. And I think that the Laundries had that and that the Petitos didn't, and that stinks. But so yeah, that language that it was his job to know, he knew or should have known that there would be dishonesty in a domestic violence call from the people involved, right? That's just kind of a no-brainer that I think most lay people know at this point in our culture. But I want to segue over into Kentucky with Sheriff Mickey Stein and his daughter and wife, who he claims some people were trying to kidnap, and that's why he shot his friend, the judge, right? Um, Over the last few days, there has been a lot more information that's come out about this case. And the most significant of which is that it appears that Mickey Stein and his wife had been in an argument or a fight or disagreement, some kind of major conflict the night before he shot the judge, and that he was actually kicked out of his house and he was not allowed to sleep at home that night. So I don't know if that's verified truth or not, but some of the evidence that's looked at is that he was wearing his street clothes and that normally he would have been wearing his uniform. Anyway, I'm speculating here. If him and his wife were fighting and she didn't want him to stay there and he was upset about it, I'm speculating that she may have called the judge, because if you're in a domestic violence relationship with somebody in law enforcement, you can't really call law enforcement to get help, right? I mean, look at Stacy Peterson and Drew Peterson and so many others like that. Sandra Birchmore, although, she knew that her abuser had been physical with her, she never tried to call law enforcement for help. She did talk about it with a couple of her close friends, but she didn't really think that there was anything she could do since Matthew Farwell, I think it's Farwell, since he was local law enforcement. And that's typical. That's a situation that I think many abuse victims have found themselves in. So if Mickey Stein's wife was fearful of domestic violence or felt like she was the victim of domestic violence, and she called the judge, maybe the judge's wife, to try to get help, and her daughter were going to be trying to basically leave. And for anybody who doesn't know, when someone's in a domestic violence relationship, the most dangerous, critical time, the most lethal and fatal time, is when the victim tries to leave. Like Micah Miller is a perfect example, right? So perhaps Mickey Stein's wife and daughter had an escape plan, and maybe the judge was involved with that. But I also don't think that we can underestimate the situation that Mickey Stein was in with the depositions that he was in the midst of giving for the lawsuit against him for his deputy that had been assaulting, the intimate violations that he made with a woman who had legal trouble, and he did that in the judge's chambers, right? So she had sued that deputy, and that deputy had served 6 months. He made like a plea agreement, and now she was suing his supervisor. And so, again, that language of Mickey, I'm sure it said this in the lawsuit, Mickey knew or should have known that his deputy was doing this. It was his job to know. So he either was well aware and he was turning a blind eye, or he was incompetent and he had no idea because he wasn't doing his job well. Either way, he's considered liable. Taking it a step further, it could well be that there was a whole system of this type of behavior within the police department, just like in the Sandra Birchmore case, just like over there in Placer County, California, going back to the Kylie Rodney case. It's nothing new to have law enforcement abuse their power and take advantage of women that have legal issues and that don't have a lot of financial stability to fight those legal battles that they're having. So the negotiation of, I'm sure we can work something out is kind of an age old adage. So it might be that Mickey Steins knew about it. It might be that he was oblivious, but my guess would be the former rather than the latter. But then I think it's fair to question of if it went even further than that, if it was bigger than just that one deputy and that one person who was suing, if this was something that was going on repeatedly in that department and with that sheriff and with that judge and the judge's chambers. I don't know. But I just think that comment that Mickey Steins made about his wife and his daughter, that there were people trying to kidnap them, that I always took that at face value. Like, well, what does he mean trying to kidnap? It wasn't until over the weekend that occurred to me, because I found out about the altercation that him and his wife got in the night before, that I thought, oh, maybe they were trying to put together an escape plan, and he found out about it and the judge was involved, and that's why he was accusing people of trying to kidnap his wife and daughter, is that maybe there were people that were trying to help his wife and daughter get to safety, and that they'd want to keep a major lid on this for a lot of reasons. Especially the defense would want to keep a major lid on it, but even the wife and the daughter would, because if that were the case, I don't think anybody would be having much sympathy for the shooter in that situation. He already took the life of a public official, which that can well get him the death penalty in that state. And if he was also a DV perp, no one's going to have any sympathy for him. And I don't know. I'm trying to not say that that's what it is, because I honestly don't know that that's what it is, but I'm just trying to put the question out there, is could that be what it is? So, man, still nobody. I must have done something. I must have hit the wrong button or something when I was setting up the live. That happens. Okay. So what else? I wanted to talk about the Fall City case, that 15-year-old boy from Western Washington, about 20 minutes, 30 minutes southeast of Seattle, by Snoqualmie Pass. The 15-year-old boy that took out his entire family, or no, tried to take out his entire family. His 11-year-old sister was the only one that survived. So his 7-year-old sister, his 9-year-old brother, is that right? And then there's the 13-year-old brother. I'm confused. I know that there was a really little sister, so 7 or 9. I know that there was the 13-year-old brother that he tried to pin it on. Yeah, I think there were 5 kids. So him, the one that survived, the 2 brothers, and the sister. So yeah, I think the little sister was 7, the other brother was 9, and then the 11-year-old survived, and then the 13-year-old he tried to pin it on, and then the 15-year-old is the one that did it, and he also took the mother and the father. So I have not heard anything about that case in a month, and I have dug and dug and dug. I keep trying to get an update. I know that there was talk about trying to get the kid um, tried as a child, which he's not going to be, in my opinion. He's 15 years old, and when it comes to red rum, you don't get charged as a child, even if you're underage. That's one of the crimes that you will be charged as an adult, because otherwise that could be wiped clear if charged as not an adult. At some point that can be wiped clear off your record, and then you could potentially go on to live a quote unquote normal life, putting a unaliver in general pop without a record. So that's not going to happen pretty much ever. They want there to be a record attached to the person, the perpetrator, for all of eternity, in the event that they ever do walk free, right? That's why it's super important. So, what else? We're at 45 minutes. The Maddie Soto case. I was listening to Paula Plunder's most recent, I guess it's body cam footage that she dropped a couple of days ago, interviews with Stephen Stern's mother and father. And it's just chilling to me, the inconsistencies in their storylines. It sounds to me like they are covering for Stephen more than most parents would. It sounds to me like they're trying to implicate Jen, which, I believe that she probably should be implicated, but it sounds like his parents are trying to take the blame off of him and put it onto Jen. And the police were very distinctively clear with the information that they had, was that Jen had no knowledge. There's no evidence that she had knowledge of the CP and that whole financial gain that Stephen was likely pursuing on the internet with the CP. So sure, it's quite possible that Jen was involved in that, and that she was part of a financial enterprise involving her daughter as the subject. But I have my own suspicions about Jen. I think she's very guilty of knowing full well that her daughter was being abused. I think she knew full well that her daughter's life was gone. I think that she covered for this douchebag. But I wouldn't go so far as to say that I have suspicion that she might have been the one who took her daughter's life. And that's clearly what Stephen Stern's parents are saying. And to me, it's just really sick. It's like I really put myself in the shoes of the parent, since I do have 4 kids, 2 daughters, 2 sons. And they're, a little bit older. Half of them are young adults now. The other half are still teenagers. I just can't imagine not wanting to hold a child accountable in a situation that dire and that serious. That, of course, I would still love my child unconditionally, no matter how disgusted I was with that type of thing. I mean, your kid is your kid. Of course, there are things that they could do to break that bond, but I think most parents are going to have that unconditional love no matter what, and empathy towards their kid. But trying to protect them when you know that they have 30,000 images on their device, and they knew that their son was up to no good for many, many years before that happened. So they knew he had a questionable character, to say the least, to put it as delicately as possible. They knew he was a scumbag. They knew he was basically worthless. And they continued to coddle him and enable him, to the extent that it very well could have played into their bankruptcy. It looks like they'd gone bankrupt before Stephen was 4. I think he was around 4 when he was run over by that truck. I'm not 100% sure. And that they're trying to say that being run over by the truck is probably why he did this, it sounds like to me, which is crazy. Um, that he had a traumatic brain injury that created a sick monster that didn't know the difference between right and wrong. I'm not buying it. I think that is extremely insulting to anybody with a traumatic brain injury, and in a way insulting to any perpetrator too, because yeah, I mean, a lot of them are really smart. A lot of them are doctors and lawyers and people that are pillars of society that couldn't be the furthest thing from having a traumatic brain injury. So anyway, I don't trust his parents at all, and it's very disturbing. I'll put a link to Paula's most recent uh, body cam footage recordings that she released. I think it was about 2 days ago. It's just about an hour long, and it's really good. And she's trying to be open-minded, like, okay, maybe it could be related to the traumatic brain injury. She Googled it, and Google said sure, it might be possible, but not very no indication that it's likely possible, basically. Again, I mean, you could say drinking milk in the mornings made him do it, right? If he drinks milk in the mornings, I mean, anything, you could draw the correlation. If you're trying, it's a reach, but you can always make a hypothesis and then find evidence to support your hypothesis, is what I'm saying. And yeah, the last time I spoke about Maddie's case, I think I was talking about how Steven Stearns threw away some garbage at 7:45 in the morning. I think there was a garbage bag that he stopped at a dumpster, maybe to get rid of it, and maybe he was on surveillance camera unwittingly. And that in that garbage bag they found her backpack, her laptop, and one Croc, and that just broke my heart, and still does. Where's the other Croc? So disgusting. So disgusting. I'm just trying to think of all the scenarios of where that other Croc could be. And yeah, the laptop, the backpack, so incriminating. So very incriminating. But whatever took her life, I don't think that they've been explicit about what caused her to not be alive anymore. Maybe they have and I missed it. I mean, I would imagine probably asphyxiation, strangulation. That's kind of the most common in a situation like that. But there's a lot of talk about firearms, right? And maybe that firearm talk is about Stephen planning on doing that to himself, but maybe there was something like that to ensure that Maddie was done and not going to survive, right? Sometimes after the fact, people do things like that to, finish them off. I mean, it's so gross. It's so gross. Anyway, my point about all of that is just vomit. Oh man, it's so sad what that girl endured for so long, and what that sick monster pedo put her through and what her sick monster mom allowed. And there was every indication that Stephen Stern's mother and father did not want him hanging out at their house anymore, hanging out at Jen Soto and Madeline Soto's townhouse that Jen's father owned, that she rented a room in. So why would that be? Why would his parents not want him to hang out there? And why would he go hang out there and keep that from them? So you'll hear in this, if you listen to Paula Plunder's most recent drop, you'll hear some talk about that, where he actually flat out lied and said he was going to a friend's house, a guy friend, and then the dad got a easy pass photo of the license plate. He got that charged onto his account from that same time frame. So to me, it indicates that the parents knew that they did not want their son hanging out with Jen and Maddie, and why wouldn't they? And that he didn't want his parents to know that he was hanging out with them. And again, why wouldn't he? If they're just friends and they've just broken up and whatever, he's still a father figure in Maddie's life. I mean, I say that and my stomach just wants to hurl, because we all know what type of father figure, disgusting violator he was. Absolutely disgusting. So, when I first started my channel, I think what really got me going, not just Kylie Rodney's case, of course, but I felt like there were things that were not being said on YouTube that I felt like needed to be said. So that was why I finally had the gumption to get it going. And, I'm a very shy person by nature, if you haven't figured that out yet. So it was extremely hard for me to put myself out there on the streets of the YouTube, but I felt like it was vital. I felt like there were things that were not being pointed out, that I didn't know if other people were not seeing them or if people just weren't articulating them. But it was really important to me that some of these things were said. And just generally speaking, off the top of my head, trying to remember what those things were in Kylie Rodney's case, it was a lot of the indications of the corruption in the law enforcement and the incongruence of Scammy's stories, how she would contradict herself even in the same sentences, and other people's stories changing. But those are the same types of things that I feel like I've seen in Hannah, is it Kawasaki? Let me look at my phone. I know I have it written in my notebook, but I'm just going to look it up real quick. Sorry. You know how I am, me and my Google brain. Hannah Kabayashi. There we go. So Hannah Kabayashi's family has kind of changed their tune. They have kept a lot of information private. There's still, both Kylie Rodney's case and Hannah Kabayashi's case, there's an ex-boyfriend, right? The ex-boyfriend with Kylie Rodney could have been two. Could have been Jägermeister and who I like to call the Hamburglar. And then in Hannah, what did I just say her last name was? Kabayashi? Kobayashi, I think is how you say it. Kobayashi. Anyway, in Hannah's case, her boyfriend's name, I know I've seen it in print once or twice, but I don't have it off the top of my head. But her boyfriend being on that flight with her, Then over the weekend, I heard that he actually made it to his destination in New York, that he didn't miss the connecting flight in Los Angeles. And I'm like, what the? Okay, now none of it makes sense. Now the whole story is sus. If they were on the same airplane, which allegedly they were, even though they were broken up, they'd already bought the tickets and they weren't sitting together, and she couldn't make her connecting flight, but he did, because they made it sound like she was running through the airport and had 42 minutes to get from one terminal to the next and just wasn't able to make it. But did she have, did she stop at a bathroom? Did she stop to buy gum? Did she stop to talk to people? Or did she even need to change planes? I'm not even 100% sure that she needed to change planes, but that is what it was portrayed to be. But there's a lot of things that were portrayed to be a certain way that now it turns out aren't that way. For instance, her going back to the LAX to retrieve her luggage a few days later after having coordinated with the airline company to have her luggage sent back from New York, since her luggage made it to its destination, but her freaking ex-boyfriend made it there too. Like, I'm just going to tell you what I think it might be with her, because it's similar to what I thought might have been with Kylie and her family. Not so much Kylie, but her family. Again, the illicit industries, like perhaps the trafficking of substances, perhaps the trafficking of things other than substances, perhaps both. Like, why would they jump straight to trafficking as their biggest fear for her if she just missed her connecting flight, but her boyfriend didn't? Why would they think, oh my goodness, she's being trafficked? Like, that's a weird go-to. Unless, of course, she was already trafficked prior to that flight. I mean, she lived in Maui. I think she was half native, and in Waikiki especially, but I would think Maui and anywhere, there's a high demand for escorts, and especially native escorts. And I'm not saying that she was. I'm putting that out there as a question. Maybe she had already been trafficked, and that's why that was their first go-to of what they feared might be going on. Maybe there's a lot of illicit types of industries or business in the family that they're trying to keep secret, which is why they're trying to get people to quit talking about her case. The whole thing with her dad really doesn't add up. And then the absolute adamancy of him being self-deleted but they're not being forthright about how they would know that. Like, do they have footage? Do they have surveillance footage? I mean, even a note isn't going to substantiate evidence, in my opinion. And it just makes more sense that, with the father and Hannah being estranged, there could have been, that could be for any reason under the sun, but it could be because of some complications with that type of thing. Another thing that has been very curious to me all along is the lack of information about what people in her family do for work. Like, are they nurses? Are they teachers? Do they work as mechanics? Do they, work in the hotel industry? Like what? Like, nothing has ever been said other than her being an artist, a DJ, a fire dancer. And those things don't produce that much income, but allegedly she paid thousands of dollars for her hotel room in New York City. So I'm just curious. I mean, everybody's got to have an income, and maybe they're trust fund puppies. Maybe they were born with silver spoons in their mouths. Who knows? But why is it never mentioned? It often is mentioned as part of the story what type of industry or profession people work in. So I've wondered that about Hannah. She was 31. And they also don't talk about her living situation. Like, did she live alone? Did she live with her family? Did she live with her ex-boyfriend? Like, where'd she live? She lived on Maui. She was from Oahu, but currently living on Maui. And where was she during the Lahaina fires a year and a half ago? I'm curious about that too. Lots and lots of questions. So I think that's about all for today. Um, I'm, let's see. I better not be reading all these notes because I'm going to confuse myself. Oh, the night of the nor'easter. I think that is going back to the Karen Reed case, the night of the nor'easter. There was also a nor'easter in the Sandra Birchmore case. So something to think about with some of these cases that happen at the beginning of major storms. That's an age-old way to try to hide evidence and try to obliterate that first 48 hours, that most crucial time in the detective work of trying to figure out what actually happened. So when you have these situations with big storms rolling in and big crimes going down, it often takes a lot longer to even figure out that a crime went down, let alone to start trying to collect the evidence. And then after a few days has already passed, that is a huge challenge for the prosecution. And when you have people that work in law enforcement, they know that. So they're going to use that to their advantage. Natural disasters are a great way to cover, right? I mean, again, with the Lahaina fires, the fact that they were calling these wildfires before they knew what the cause of the fires was. It just drives me crazy. Like the way they start trying to control the narrative from go reminds me of in the Helena Hutchins case and the Good Samaritan with the box of insignificant ammunition. And you can't call somebody a Good Samaritan if you don't know if they're a Good Samaritan, because if they're dropping off a box of ammunition to try to monkey wrench the prosecution's case because they're friends with somebody, that doesn't make them a good Samaritan. That makes them a dirtbag. So in the case of Hannah Gutierrez Reed and her father's friend Thad, what was his name? Oh, it's so frustrating. It reminds me of Troy McCoy. The Hannah Gutierrez Reed's father's friend. I'm just going to Google it so I'm not being all spaced out. Um, uh, let's see. Sorry, you guys. Phone's being slow. And it's just not even going to work. Okay. Thalreed is the father. So let's see. Thalreed's friend. That they call the Good Samaritan. And yeah, I know that he used to work as a cop and that he sometimes worked as a judge, but that still doesn't mean that he's not just trying to cover for his friend. But yeah, my phone is really bogged down. I've been trying to open up some of the memory on it. It's not gonna work for me. Anyway, what was I saying about Thalreed's friend that they called the Good Samaritan all throughout that court case? And then when it turns out that, in my opinion, the information that the prosecution was accused of suppressing was not relevant information. So, I still think that it would have been great if they had documented that it happened and that they thought that it was not material and that they thought it was irrelevant. Had they documented it and that been part of the evidence that they shared with the defense, then they couldn't have gotten hit with this allegation of the Brady Giglio and then had Hannah's manslaughter or homicide case thrown out. And I just thought that was so criminal, so very criminal. I mean, the family, her husband, her son, her parents, her sibling or siblings, I'm not sure, but they already have to deal with the loss of her and then to deal with the loss of justice as well. I am not going to hold my breath that will ever get reopened and that justice will be had. I was hopeful at one point, and then especially when the prosecuting attorney, what was her name? Carrie Morrissey, when she made a filing trying to get it reopened, but unfortunately her filing was just not that well put together. It was like 45 pages or something, and I guess it's supposed to be very concise. So she just went on and on and on, and that's unfortunate. I mean, she seemed like a very intelligent attorney who knew her stuff. So why would she do that? Why would she make a 45-page filing when it's supposed to be concise, which I would think would be like 5 or 10 pages? I don't know. But not 45 pages. So it sounded like she had a good argument, but that she blew it. And that was her argument, was that this was not relevant material, and Brady Giglio only applies if it's relevant material that is being withheld. So if it's irrelevant material, then it's a moot point. Anyway, I'm going to sign off. Thank you so much for being here, you guys. If you're here on the replay or if you're here and you just can't chat, I apologize if I did something wrong with that. I'm thinking that I probably did. And did I already say it's Monday, December 2nd? It's just about 2:20 in the afternoon. Love and light to all. And I hope that things are going well for your holiday season. I know for me, sometimes it feels like running a marathon, and, the holidays are like hurdles that I have to get over, and it's a huge relief once it's done. So right now, we just got done with Thanksgiving. It all went pretty well. And then now we get to brace for Christmas. And I wish it wasn't like that. I wish I didn't use that language, like brace for Christmas. When I was a kid, I was so excited about Christmas, but as the parent, it's a lot of pressure. And I feel like as parents, we have enough pressure. We don't need any extra pressure. But maybe as your kids get older, they can help with some of that rather than creating more pressure. They can alleviate some of the pressure. I don't know. I know that my husband's gotten much better over the years. Like, he did pretty much all the cooking for Thanksgiving. Bless his soul. I confess to you guys, all I did was make Waldorf salad. So that was my contribution, and just chilling. Anyway, love and light. I hope your holidays are going well. I hope you had a good Black Friday weekend and got some Christmas shopping underway if that's something that you do. It's always good to get that stuff done early so it's not stressing you out. But, holidays are a really stressful time. And for a lot of people, a very challenging time. So we'll talk more about that through this holiday season. And just take really good care of yourself. Don't consider like giving up caffeine if you're like me. I'm always giving health tips, but for me, that is a health tip. The last time I gave up caffeine, I took up cigarettes. So um, I promised myself I would never make that mistake again. It's never gone well when I've tried giving up caffeine, but that was about the worst attempt. So I just threw in the towel and just promised myself that I wouldn't mess with myself like that no more. Just let myself have that one vice. I mean, I'm sure I have others too, other than YouTube and jewelry and home decor and yoga. And yeah, you guys are the bomb. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching my channel. Please hit your like button on the way out if you haven't already hit it. And take really good care of yourself. Just love yourself, love the people around you, be kind to yourself, be kind to the people around you, and just be. That's my favorite advice to give. And again, I only give the advice that I need to hear. Just be. Be yourself. All right. Enough preaching, enough of my soapbox. See you on the next one. Thank you for being here.